So by now, watching my videos on UX interviews and how to perform your best as a candidate, you should know that asking right questions is as important as answering the questions you receive from, let's say, a hiring team or a hiring manager. Now, how do you ask a good question? I kind of shared with you this simple framework of splitting your dimensional thinking into 4 buckets, meaning asking about the role, asking about the existing UX capability or team, asking about the product practice, and then asking as well about the firm, organization, strategy, culture. But that covers the basics. The level up to that is actually structuring your questions, which activates our much more human psychology-driven behavioral type of factors. And I'm going to cover exactly that in this video. So what makes a good question is really what engages a person. That's a no-brainer, right? Ultimately, everybody comes prepared to those sessions to ask something they want to find out. If you put yourself in the hiring manager's shoes or someone who's interviewing you, they have some reservations, always. They have some concerns, they have some question marks, they liked something they saw, let's say, in your application, your portfolio, but they want to find out just a little bit extra, just to find out if you are actually as good as you look like on paper. And this is something I recommend to every candidate or every person I talk to in UX who is growing designer, is actually consider that if you got that call, if you got an invitation for interview, they're already kind of likely to hire you with what they have in mind. They just need to double check those extra things. So kind of they want to proceed forward. So come from that perspective. You're almost coming there to give them a bit extra, to inform them that you're actually that good candidate we kind of observed. And so if you don't know that, you would just come and you kind of just cover the basics. You would cover maybe about your failures, your weaknesses, strengths, success stories, learnings, something relevant to the actual interview. But then it's going to come to you to chip in with the questions. And I always recommend people to ask questions during the interview instead of just waiting until you are actually asked to ask questions. You always need to prepare questions, write them down. An example of that looks like this, and forgive this, mess and this hasty note. So you have, again, the role, design, products, practice, strategy, culture, things of that nature. Everything I want to find out as a human being, as a person, what resonated from what I could find out online in the application, things of that nature. For example, for the role, as I covered in a previous video, which do check it out, is like, why now? What are the key challenges for a role? Is it a new role? Things of that nature. As I went through the actual interview, I also added new notes. So in a follow-up interviews, I can dig deeper, or maybe it's reservations I can follow up later on and things of that nature. Go beyond the basics. What makes a good question is really that. Have you noticed when you talk to people and you ask a question, they kind of pause and say, oh, good question. And they try to answer it and almost go on a journey trying to tell you a story, connecting different bits, connecting several different basic answers they might have prepared and trying to give you a bit more, trying to understand where you're coming from. This is what good question looks like. And it doesn't mean that every time that the person tells you, oh, good question, and then try to answer it, it only means that they weren't prepared for it. That's all the bottom line is. You probably notice that when, let's say, a politician is on a podium and someone asks him a difficult question or kind of a question which we didn't expect to receive, they would do the same. You've probably seen my video on the System 1 and System 2 thinking, borrowed from Daniel Kahneman's Think Slow and Fast book. He describes that first system is that intuition is based on all the things you kind of are ready to answer, all the things you're prepared. It's all the things which you just kind of are reactively answering and jumping in and giving some information. But however, the system 2 is something you need time to process, something you kind of like activate to solve problems, if that makes sense. And there's a lot of other, permutations of that. However, that principle applies here because the good question would activate that system too. It would go beyond the basic means, the cliches, the something which hiring manager will receive day in and day out. You want to go and connect with them on that deeper level, something which would make them pause for a second and bring those details up. Because that would then mean that we bring trust up. We share much more than just the surface level, something which is very intuition based and something very reactive. It would be much more proactive, them driving the message. Because ultimately, you're not just there to discover what you already know or what you saw online, or just confirm that. And while there is no such thing as stupid questions, don't ask the basic things you can already research online yourself, or just, through Google, or just looking at their website. Try to go deeper. That's what good questions are in the end. And just to finish on that note, what you're trying to do is really to connect on a human level. That's what it comes down to. People rarely bring you to the interview, especially to the late stages like leaderships, and culture fit and things of that nature. They're bringing you to understand if they can work with you, if the culture of the firm and yourself match, if your ambition matches up. There's all those different aspects, but it's only possible if you actually connect and if you share enough, if there's enough development and exchange of information. So try to dig a bit deeper. Again, don't overstretch, but try to arrive at that point where the good question is literally that. People stop, they pause, they give you a bit more than they would give anyone else who's interviewing, out of all the different tough competition. Because you never know who's competing with you. But what's in your control is really this. If you like this video, smash that like button, leave a comment down below if you have any other topics you would like to find out. I'm happy to look at it, maybe drop you a note or make another video. And on that note, I'll see you next time.